Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for September 21st, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freedman, the editor-in-chief, and I'm joined by returning regulars Adam Levitan and Peter Jennings. You can follow them on Twitter at Adam Levitan and CSURAM88. And also joining the show is Max Steinberg. You can follow him on Twitter at Max J. Steinberg. He's a World Series of Poker Gold Bracelet winner, a World Series of Poker November Niner, a professional DFS player, and the proprietor of Daily Fantasy Winners. Max, thanks for being on the show.
As always, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, okay, Max, I told you, I think this via email, but I just want to remind you that in this episode, there are going to be some skill game propositions, and you will have the opportunity to participate in these. At stake with each proposition will be a cold, crisp, delicious six-pack of Coors Light. Right now, I want to revisit the skill game props from last week. Gentlemen, I hope you brought your beer money because I am ready to drink. Last week, I was the big 3-0. I would say a bold 3-0. Levitan was 1-2, and Evan Silva was 1-3. Max, I hope you can do better than 1-3. It's not a very high bar around here. That's what we call the Silva line. It's not as well known as the Mendoza line, but it's every bit as disgraceful. Levitan and Silva went head-to-head, and they washed each other out. Silva took Adam to the cleaners with LeGarrette Blount, but then Adam won with a 260-yard outing from Josh McCown. The big prop of the episode was my call that Eli Manning would not be a top-5 quarterback. Levitan and Silva both owe me a six-pack of polluted water for that one. And then Silva also owes another sixer because Steve Smith Sr. had only 6 targets, which I have to say is actually the fewest that he's ever had in Baltimore under Mark Trestman as offensive coordinator. So that was also a fairly bold take. Now, Levitan, in the history of the show, you are 3-3 in skill game propositions. What is your plan for profitability moving forward?
First of all, I love how accurately you're keeping this. I mean, we have weekly standings. We have year-to-date standings. That's amazing. That's how you got to be on top of it. My plan for profitability going forward is to stick to team bold calls. I feel in the zone with my teams right now, you know, like everything's coming together where like everybody's on one side, like the Seahawks or the Ravens, and then the other side is hitting, you know, and that's right in my wheelhouse. So I'm going to stick with that.
I think that sounds pretty good. And Peter, after week 2, I am now in the lead for all-time victories at 4-1. Now, you're 3-2. Of course, you weren't on the show last week, but you have to be on the mound to get strikeouts. You know what I mean? Anyway, Pete, how was the Goo Goo Dolls concert? Did it take you back to the days when you were 10 years old and watching City of Angels?
It was actually not that great, and I love the Google Dolls, and I loved them when I was younger in like high school, and we had some like high school sweethearts things. But my wife and I were kind of disappointed with the performance by the Google Dolls. So
really, was it Red Rocks?
Yeah, it was the venue was perfect, but they don't quite have it anymore. I mean,
I think the lead singer is really old now at this point, like in his maybe. I don't know.
Like Iris and Black Balloon were really good, but they tried to do some new stuff, and like the whole crowd was just dead, and they were doing all the new stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was still a really good time. Bummed I wasn't there, obviously for the pod, and need to get back in the lead. I'll throw out some more bold, outrageous things like Andrew Luck, top 2 quarterback, and hopefully be a luck sack this pod.
Well, hey, let's get it started right. Skill game proposition. Tavon Austin will not score a touchdown. Pete, do you want to take that?
No, dude, I can't. I saw something today from good friend Drew Dinkmeyer, and Tavon Austin and Stephon Diggs have the same amount of targets, and the production's just a little bit different between Stephon Diggs and Tavon Austin so far this year. So I'm gonna hold out on Tavon Austin scoring a touchdown, but maybe next week.
Yeah, I think it might be the type of thing where, honestly, his best chance of scoring a touchdown really might be in the return game, which is kind of sad. Okay, so let's get into the show. A quick reminder, for all of our matchup analysis, you should see the matchups dashboard on the site. It comes out every Thursday, and it has previews of each game as well as positional breakdowns by yours truly. On this show, we're going to be focused less on the matchups and more on roster construction and game theory. So let's get into it. Max, let's start with you. When you are making lineups for this slate, who are the first players that you are tending to lock in? Or I guess phrased differently, who are the chalky plays that you are fine with being part of your cash game core?
Right. So this is kind of like the week of the backup running back. There's so many running back injuries last week. And so there's a lot of chalky plays. And I think my favorite two running backs are probably Melvin Gordon, number one. I think this San Diego offensive line is way, way improved. I really like the way he's been playing. I think he's going to get goal line snaps. He's going to be involved in the passing game. He has a pretty solid price on both sides. So he's someone I'm going to be using a lot. And then Jerick McKinnon as well, just because he's just priced really, really well on both sides. And so I think even though he might not get goal line carries because of Matt Asiata and might not get he's not going to be like the number one only person getting snaps guy, but that price I really, really like and seems like a good fit for cash games. And then lastly, a quarterback, I think Ryan Tannehill seems fantastic. He's just really well priced. Awesome matchup versus the Browns. Those are I think he's a real safe play and a really great play.
Adam, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I like McKinnon, man. I mean, I like these spark freak athlete guys. I'm concerned about the matchup, number one, and I think I prefer Theo Riddick, and I think I prefer Charles Sims, obviously assuming that both Abdullah and Doug Martin are out. I don't know if those are hot takes yet. I mean, it's so early in the week. I haven't done a ton of research, but as Max said, I mean, we have to pay $1,100 more for each of those guys. So that's certainly going to be a consideration. I'm just not sure that I need to be saving a ton of salary this week. So I'll see how it goes. I mean, it's so early. On DK specifically, obviously, Riddick and Sims already have that pass catching floor built in. Let me go to my ownership projections here. Oh, yeah. Jarvis Landry and Travis Benjamin, I think, are just like the uber chalk on DraftKings for sure. I mean, everybody's going to be on Benjamin after last week, now facing the Colts, quote unquote, defense, which remains there's something wrong with their training staff, man. They have dudes going down at an epic rate. And I've seen Colts fans complaining about this, and they might have a point. I mean, they're just losing guys constantly. And then Jarvis Landry, I mean, target monster. I expect Miami to be extremely pass heavy without Arian Foster. So I like those two too.
I like to call on Jarvis Landry, just hoping to get to me, and I can mention him first. That's probably my favorite cash game play this week. I do think savings will be applicable to some degree, but really the guys that you would want to pay for aren't in the best spots relative to last week. So it's kind of a tricky week for me so far in lineup building. It's a lot easier if you're including the Monday game for any of the slates there. I think Mark Ingram, for example, is a guy that I might have a lot of, Devontae Freeman. But it's tough. We'll have to see with the running back. I think Melvin Gordon certainly will end up being the chalkiest of all these players with the matchup. I like him, but I don't know. I got burned so bad last year with Melvin Gordon in that championship. That was just the worst, and now he's just been tilting me scoring touchdowns. So I'm sure I'll jump back on and he'll get injured or have a bad game. But, I think that's kind of the chalk. I think people will still probably end up on D'Angelo Williams a decent bit as well, just because he's one of the guys that you can feel somewhat comfortable paying for. I might be off that, though, because I think Philly defense is #really good, like Adam was talking about at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit more about that Saints and Falcons game? I'm curious about the dynamic of it, given the slate that it's in. Also, with it being a home game for the Saints, I think it will be popular. Of course, it is following that travesty of a game in New York in which neither offense did really well. Do you guys have any thoughts on how, one, on how that might go, but then two, on how the public might perceive that game and react to it?
Go ahead, Max.
Oh, I was going to let you go ahead. I mean, in terms of the public perception, I mean, obviously the perception is it's going to be really high scoring, but it's definitely I think the Falcons, the way they've been using their personnel this year is just so strange. I was looking at red zone targets, and Julio Jones has 0 so far this year, and I think they've had 12 to 16 red zone opportunities. They're splitting time with Freeman and Tevin Coleman. It's just sort of it's hard to figure out what to do with the Falcons in that game. Although with the Saints, it seems much more obvious. You just go with Snead, you go with Cooks, you probably go with Ingram, and it's much more straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, First of all, if you're playing Thursday to Monday slate, I assume one of the reasons you're playing is because you want guys from this game. So, like, I think that they might be inflated even more ownership than they would be normally. And, I mean, the Julio thing is, like, every time I watch this guy, he's hobbling around. He rolled his ankle in the third preseason game, aggravated it in week 1, hurt his calf in week 2, and he still goes out and crushes. But, like, at some point, that's scary to me. We've seen secondary receivers have really good games against the Saints. We saw Michael Crabtree do it. We saw Sterling Shepard do it. Maybe we see Mohamed Sanu have a big game here at maybe a fraction of the ownership that Julio gets or something like that.
Yeah, I think Sanu's a fine play. And for those of you who are playing the slate, good job. Play all the slates. Move in the NFL. But I think Sanu's a good play. Julio does make me nervous, and there's a long history of guys with these foot injuries, especially big receivers. It's hard to stay in the field after those. So I'm just a little concerned about Julio. I still think he's a fine play. I'm sure he'll be heavily owned. I really like the Saints in this spot. I mean, they had the higher team total. They're favored in this game. I think Ingram's a phenomenal play. The running backs with Freeman and Coleman, you have to kind of figure out who's going to be, which play you want to take for the price. But I like Drew Brees and I like Ingram, and I don't mind stacking Brees with any of those pass catchers. Snead, Cooks. I know Snead was out, but he came back in. Are you sure he's okay, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, he came back in, thankfully, for my cash game and cash game team and scored a touchdown. So I haven't seen anything since then. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow, obviously, first practice of the week.
Right. So I like the Saints there quite a bit. But, just last comment here on the chalk. I do agree with Max that Tannehill looks like a really, really nice quarterback play. I think another guy who might end up being somewhat popular as well will be Dak again. Dak is still relatively cheap, and I was pretty impressed with him.
And I don't think he'll be popular, but I like that call.
So just kind of circling back to the Saints and Falcons game, I think the idea that this game might be inflated in terms of ownership, like that resonates with me. I think with this new dynamic of Monday being a game in the Thursday slate that basically is equivalent now to Thursday, that if you are playing that slate, in part it's because you want to have those Monday players. I think it could inflate the ownership there. And Ingram, he scares me a little bit. I like him. I really want to like him, but he scares me a little bit just because of the touches for the last couple of weeks. They really just haven't been there the way that you would want them to be for a guy who should be the workhorse on his team. But he is in a very nice spot. Let's talk about the chalky players that we're looking to pivot away from. Who are the leverage and pivot plays that you are considering? And Adam, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think Mike Evans is going to be really highly owned this week. I currently have him at 21 to 25%. I'm still trying to get a feel for where people are at around the industry with guys, but given Mike Evans' target workload he's seen so far, and given the matchup against the Rams, who have shown their annual brutal secondary, it's like, and he's only 7K on DraftKings. Like, I think Mike Evans is going to be very popular. And anytime a guy like that who has a low catch rate, who is extremely volatile in terms of range of outcomes, I'm willing to fade him if he's really going to be in that 21 to 25% range. So, in that 7K range, there's a ton of ways we can go. T.Y. Hilton, Eric Decker, Larry Fitzgerald, Jordan Matthews, Kelvin Benjamin, Brandon Marshall. I really like Jordy Nelson and Allen Robinson as kind of bounce back guys. So I think there's a lot of pivots we can move to if we really think that Mike Evans is going to be real high owned.
I'll be curious to see where Mike Evans is owned. I'm not sure he'll be quite that heavily owned, but it is a tough week at receiver. We talked about Jarvis Landry being a great play on the same team. I wonder how owned he'll end up being, but Devontae Parker got a ton of targets last week, went over 100 yards. I like him quite a bit, and the same kind of philosophy. We know that Travis Benjamin's going to be highly owned, but Terrell Williams, to me, looks like a better tournament play. The guy is an athletic freak, and I think that he possesses quite a bit of upside. So I like the pivots on the same team. In terms of the high-end guys, I don't really have a feel for what it's going to look like this week with Antonio Brown and guys like, Odell Beckham. I just don't know how people are going to spend up there. I probably won't at this point, but certainly a lot could change throughout the week.
Yeah, my guy to pivot from, I think, is touching on who Adam talked about as a chalk play is Theo Riddick. I think that he's probably going to be really, really popular, and I'm not convinced that he's going to get that many more snaps with Abdullah out. I think they have their guy, Dwayne Washington, I think his name is. I hope that's his name.
That is, yeah.
Who is more of their like traditional running back guy. Riddick does run sometimes, but he's mostly their pass catching back. I'm just not convinced he's going to get that many more snaps. And I'm also not convinced that Detroit's really going to trail that much in this game either. I know they're 8-point underdogs, but look, Green Bay had barely beat Jacksonville. I know that was at Jacksonville. They lost to Minnesota and couldn't move the ball. Green Bay has a solid defense. This kind of might be one of those low-scoring games like New York and New Orleans we had last week. So I think Riddick is a good candidate to fade if he's going to get that high ownership.
I like the call, but there's a skill game prop there at some point. So we got to remember that. I like Green Bay a decent bit in the spot.
Yeah, Pete, go ahead and just make the skill game prop now.
I don't know exactly what it is. I'd have to think about it, but I do like Green Bay to win by more than a touchdown. I think that this is a good spot for Green Bay's defense, which is why I like the pivot away from Riddick. I think that they definitely could get some pressure on Stafford, even though I've been impressed with him. I just think this is a good spot overall for Green Bay. The only concern I have, and we were talking a little bit about this, at least a couple of us were, about Aaron Rodgers. He is, I believe the status, he hasn't thrown for over 300 yards in 11 straight games. So that's more my concern, but I'm definitely buying Green Bay's defense. I think they're better than people think, and I like the spot a lot more.
And here's one quick thing, actually. I think there are multiple ways that the Theo Riddick fade could work. So one could be that it does turn into the type of game where Dwayne Washington is running the ball more, that type of thing. But also, Dwayne Washington was a great receiver in college at the University of Washington. So it is feasible that he could also start to siphon away the receiving work from Riddick if they find that he can do the job in a comparable way and they don't just want to sort of like just telegraph that they are clearly going to be passing the ball. And I think they don't want to be in a situation where Riddick is out there as the main runner either. So I think the Riddick fade is actually really interesting. Mm-hmm. Max, go ahead.
Can I just say one last thing? I mean, we've talked about so many running backs this week. We haven't even named like Kristen Michael and other value running backs that are under 6K. And it's not so much like, oh, I think Riddick's going to do really badly. It's sort of like, okay, well, if he's going to get the highest ownership, I'd rather go with these guys like Sims and Michael, who are the same price, who I think may have a better chance of producing. I mean, it's sort of like just take the guys who are not going to be owned and use those ones because there's so much great value at running back this week.
Oh, yeah. And one other thing, if you're going to try to pivot away from a very sharp point, Max, but I do think if you want to be really contrarian, paying up at running back actually makes some sense. There's not the best options necessarily in terms of matchup, but I think someone like David Johnson, who could be really involved in the passing game against Buffalo, even though it might not be the total best spot, could be a really interesting leverage play. I mentioned D'Angelo Williams already. Even though I really don't like the matchup, he's going to get 30-plus touches if it goes like the first 2 weeks. So that's another way. I think roster construction in general might be a cheaper quarterback, cheaper running backs than spending up at tight end and receiver. So it's tough to kind of get a gauge on it, but definitely sharp point by Max on Theo, and another way to be contrarian is spending up a running back.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some GPPs. Last week, the Millionaire Maker jumped to $20, and our good friend Al Zeidenfeld, a.k.a. Al Smizzle, he won the contest with a very nice lineup. It literally stacked Benjamins. What are some of the GPPs that you guys have your eye on this week, Peter?
So I think the one that's most enticing to me is this $333 I believe it's $25 million with $250,000 to first. That's definitely the one that's standing out the most to me. I think it's a sweet. It's the Wildcat special. I love that tournament. Also think the $3 tournament, which has become really popular already. Right now, we're recording this Tuesday night. 105.6K entrants in the tournament for the play actions. So I think that's a great one. The Millionaire Maker obviously is a lot of fun. Not sure it's exactly the best tournament if you're trying to grind up a bankroll. The prize pool is approaching 25% again, so or at least first place is approaching 25%. But yeah, for me personally, I really like this Wildcat special.
Yeah, I like to grind the slant, the $9 tournament on DK. I've talked about it last week. I think that from a payout perception, and from somebody who likes to make maybe somewhere between 10 and 20 lineups, I just fire them in there and don't have like a lot of regrets about taking shots because it's only $9. Agree with Pete on the 333. That looks like an awesome tournament. And I mean, God, if Al can win $1 million and Dink can win $1 million, why can't I win a goddamn million? I mean, I'm playing the freaking Millionaire the Maker this week, and I'm going to hopefully win it.
Yeah, Levitan, it's not every day that you are the Freedman function loser on a podcast, but you are now officially the loser of the Edge podcast with Jennings and Smizzle flanking you. It's a sad day.
It's really, really, really sad. Really sad.
Max, what are the GPPs you're eyeing?
Yeah, for me, it's this $300 ones, both on FanDuel and DraftKings, the Wildcat and the Monster. I like the high stakes tournaments.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the conventional stacks that you are considering this week for your GPPs, Max?
I'm just going to be – I don't know if this is conventional. I hope it's not, but I'm just going to be going like all the Tannehill, Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry just all day. I think that's an amazing stack, and I'll be using it quite a bit.
That was my first thing I said this week. I was like, "Oh, I'm on Tannehill."
Yeah,
that's the chalk down.
I think he's good. He's like a good quarterback. Like, no, I'm not even talking about fantasy. I think he's legitimately a good quarterback. He's looked really good this year.
You guys see Ryan Tannehill lower his shoulder and take that guy down? I mean, last week, but like, yeah, Ryan Tannehill is an ex-wide receiver. There's a lot of upside in that. I think this is a phenomenal spot. I mean, last week, game flow definitely helped him out, but I mean, first two games of the year, too, also going to that running stat, 5 attempts, 6 attempts. I mean, there's a lot of sneaky upside with Tannehill here. I wish he wouldn't have gone off so much in the end of that Patriots game, but I think that's really a nice play. I mentioned Dak before. I don't mind going some stacks with Dak if you want to go with Dez or Terrence Williams. And then the one I want to ask Adam about is Russell Wilson. Is this a good Russell Wilson, like Doug Baldwin spot, even with the ankle being so bad? I mean, I hate taking Russell Wilson when I don't think he's 100% healthy, but this could be a good spot.
So I think we saw kind of the upside of using guys against San Francisco in the Cam game. You know, it's like they play so fast and give up so many plays. And if you look at these guys like Russ and Cam on a fantasy point per play basis, I mean, when you can get 20 extra plays out of them, it's just so massive. I think Russ has struggled much like he did at the beginning of last year. I remember in season long last year through like the first 6 weeks, I mean, people were dropping this dude. And then out of nowhere, he just goes and tears off the most historic streak I've ever seen from a quarterback. So I think Russ is interesting in GPPs, man. I mean, he's going to get a lot of plays off. Let's see how his ankle is. I'm tired of hearing about how this guy doesn't sleep. I'd be more comfortable with him if he was sleeping instead of bragging about how he never sleeps. But no, it's definitely a thought. I think I have Russ down at like 2 to 4% or 5 to 8%. So it's certainly interesting. I don't know how popular this one's going to be, but I think Blake Bortles to Allen Robinson is just an awesome stack this week. Two guys that have struggled. Allen Robinson has really struggled to get going, and they have come out and said they're going to get that fixed, and a great place to get it fixed is against Ravens secondary, which, you know, Corey Coleman lit him up. I mean, Josh McCown, shout out to Josh McCown, true gamer, you know, gets knocked out, comes back in, ripping it up. I love McCown. But yeah, I think Bortles to A-Rob, people aren't going to be on that a ton when they really should. I think it's a lot of recency bias would be the reason people wouldn't be on it.
Yeah, that's a good call. Two things that I have to do. One, the number one stack for me every week is Andrew Luck and the receivers outside of when they play the Broncos, which fortunately worked out amazing. But the other guy that I think will garner a decent bit of ownership, which is scary, I mentioned that so already, is Aaron Rodgers. In some form of Aaron Rodgers stack, it's going to probably be heavily owned. Max, what are your thoughts on Rodgers this week?
Well, I mean, you know, what I said is I don't think this is going to be that high scoring of a game. I would say he's my favorite. I mean, obviously he's a good player to use. And my GPP philosophy is, you know, go with a lot of quarterback, wide receiver stack diversity and sort of build around that and you know, or have that be the way you diversify your lineups, because you have it hit and your core hits, then you just have to get that right stack. So it's not like I'm not going to use him, but I don't know. I'm not as high as you are.
All right.
I think
I'm not super high. I like the Packers overall. I don't know. I need to think about this. And I'm looking at his game log. I heard a stat earlier that I think wasn't right. Looking at the game log, it looks like 9 straight games with 300 or less passing yards. But man, if you could get it going at home against the Lions with game flow and just how fast they play, I think it could be interesting. We'll revisit that here in a second, Max. There's got to be something with the Packers.
Yeah, for sure.
Levitan, I'm curious. So you're on Bortles and A-Rob. Do you have any thoughts on Hearns in there?
Yeah, I got burned by Hearns last week, man, and you know how it is in DFS. Once a guy burns you once, you can never go back to him. Yeah, no, I like Hearns. I mean, I like all the Jags. I can't believe that the Ravens are favored. I mean, the Ravens are not a good football team. I know the Jags have been bad. They're 0-2. I mean, this is just like a spot. You know, Ravens are 2-0. Jags are 0-2. Jags are at home. It's just like such a great spot for the Jags. I really expect them to play well. So yeah, I have no problem with triple stack. I mean, give me all the pass game options for Jacksonville.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about advanced or contrarian stacks. And so let's say we even have some of these stacks where we're thinking, Tannehill is going to be highly owned. Are there any scenarios in which we can make that stack palatable by diversifying a little bit or anything like that? Adam, let's go to you.
Yeah, Kenny Stills has had an extremely high snap count through the first 2 games. I mean, they go to his 3-wide base, and I always thought Kenny Stills could really play. It would not surprise me at all to see Kenny Stills outscore Devontae Parker in this spot. So I think pairing Tannehill with Kenny Stills makes sense. And I'll put a disclaimer on this guy. I mean, I'm not going to use him because he's just been like the worst since he got to Miami. But Jordan Cameron has shown signs of life over the last 2 weeks from both a target and like a playing level perspective. And it seems like the Dolphins are getting higher and higher on him. So, yeah, you don't have to use Devontae Parker and Jarvis Landry if you play Tannehill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also want to say I feel like the first 2 weeks it's been the double stacks. You know, it's been Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. It was Cooks and Snead in week 1. And I think that's sort of going to become a thing that a lot of people look at and say, oh, this is what you have to do to win the Millionaire Maker, which I don't think is true. And especially because Ryan Tannehill can run for touchdowns and they do run him in the red zone. I think stacking him with maybe just like Jordan Cameron or just one of the wide receivers might actually help you be a little contrarian because you're going to see guys who are going to go Stills Parker, and that might not be the right thing to do.
Yeah. I definitely think the game stacks is still a good strategy, but I certainly understand that. I think the double stacks in general don't work out as much as people think they will, given what's happened in the first couple of weeks. I think you're right, Max. A lot of people are thinking that's a must at this point. I think that's a great way to be contrarian is going away from the 2 receivers and doing Cameron. Some contrarian stacks that I like. I originally was going to mention Robinson, but I guess that might be popular since Adam's on it. But some other ones I think could be interesting. Kirk Cousins, he does have severe home road splits, which is a little bit concerning, but he could bounce back in a big way. I like him with Deshaun Jackson, who looks like he's kind of back. There's a couple others that I think are interesting. How old do you guys think Joe Flacco will be?
Oh, not a lot at all.
Let me check my trusty FantasyLabs ownership projections here. I have
powered by Adam Levitan.
2 to 4%.
All right. I see he could be interesting again at Jacksonville. Philip Rivers just torched that defense. They looked awful, but going home, maybe they right the ship. You know, Cam Newton, stacking him again, I would consider, but I think people will still be on him, and I really hate the matchup against Minnesota. Adam, do you think Xavier Rhodes will be back this week?
Haven't heard anything on him. I'm not sure. I definitely have a ton of respect for Vikings defense. So, yeah, I don't know. I have Cam at 5 to 8% right now, but Cam is just such a beast. He's always in play. I'll throw out 2 off the board stacks that I like. Shout out to Evan Silva. We were talking about this one earlier today. Alex Smith and Jeremy Maclin. We know that the Jets are an extreme funnel defense. We know that Darrelle Revis is done. And I wish it can become like such a popular thing now. Like now everybody knows Darrelle Revis is done. But yeah, I think Jeremy Maclin's just going to tear up Darrelle Revis. And it's a spot where I think Andy Reid takes an extremely pass-heavy approach. And then the other one that I like, this may get more popular as the week goes on, but Andrew Luck and Philip Dorsett. I don't expect Dante Moncrief to be able to play in this game. And And if Jason Verrett shadows T.Y. Hilton, which I'm not sure he will, but if he does, Philip Dorsett could have a real big game.
Adam, keep that one quiet, buddy. let's keep the Andrew Luck Dorsett one quiet, because that's going to be where I'm all in. No, just kidding. I love Andrew Luck this week. I think he's an incredible option. The big thing, I want to go real quickly back to Cam Newton. If Xavier Rhodes is out, I don't mind Cam Newton and Kelvin Benjamin, although a lot of people might be chasing it. I do think that's a stack that's going to have a lot of staying power all year. This might be one of the worst matchups. If Rhodes is playing, I'll be off it completely, because I think Rhodes probably matches up better with Benjamin than almost any corner in the league with his size. Max, any other sneaky stacks? I think I've gotten kind of mine all out there.
Well, you mentioned Cousins, and I kind of like Jordan Reed with Cousins. I think the Giants were really bad against tight ends last year, and I don't think they've gotten any better with their linebackers and safeties being pretty bad in coverage. And this is kind of a gut feeling thing more, but I kind of feel like, the Redskins started 0-2. They might just go back to what's working instead of running fade routes to just Doxson or whatever. Just start throwing to Reed a lot, like what worked last year. And maybe as a big game. So I think that's an interesting play as well.
Love.
Adam and I are huge Jordan. Adam, you're number one fan, but I'm right up there.
Oh man, and I mean the Giants, like, they don't even care, like, from both a personnel and like a scheme standpoint. Like, they don't care if tight ends just go nuts on them every week. Like, they don't even care. I think Jordan Reed's he's expensive, and I don't know if I'll be able to get there in cash, but I think he's a great tournament play.
Okay, so I have one, and I hate even to say this name because I know that it is very off the wall, but I just want to say Blaine Gabbert has not been the worst quarterback ever in his first 2 weeks, and he is going to be incredibly low owned. He actually had a positive plus-minus last year in Seattle when the 49ers played the Seahawks, and that was without the fast pace of Chip Kelly. I'm just saying it might be possible that he's not a horrible guy to put in a very small percentage of lineups, but I would like to get some feedback on that.
Skill game, Rob.
Friedman.
It's a horrible idea.
What is Blaine Gabbert's ceiling at Seattle?
I think his ceiling at Seattle is maybe around like 2 touchdowns and maybe like 250 yards.
All right. That versus Carolina, he just did that, 22.7 DK points.
So if that's his ceiling, and we have all these other quarterbacks that are within like 500 and like 700 of him, like, why would we ever go there?
Because he will be so incredibly low owned that I think he could give an edge there, especially if you are able to stack him successfully. Like, what is his ownership going to be? What was that?
I said this might be your worst take of all time.
I think it might be. That's why we wanted to run it by you guys. But the thing is, like, his ownership will be near zero.
Yeah, Levitan has it 0-1, so the trust of that.
I think one of the issues here as well is I like, and I know Adam is on this as well, is paying down for QBs on DraftKings, and he is min, so I do like that usually, but this might not be the week for it just because there's so many value plays all around. But I think maybe on another week when there's some real high-priced wide receivers that we really, really want to own, although, Antonio Brown is up there, so I think it's not as egregious as these other guys think it is. But
it's pretty egregious, but I think it deserves some more attention. I think.
Do you want to do a skill game prop over?
Hey, stop trying to steal my thunder over here, Adam.
All right, go ahead.
My skill game prop. First of all, I do think Gabbert possesses some good GPP upside this year. He's going to rush a couple touchdowns in. I've been impressed with how athletic he is as a runner, and with Chip Kelly as Chip Kelly calling the plays is going to be good for him. But let's set a point total that we think is reasonable. I want the under. You got the over for a Coors Light prop.
Let me see what the projection is on Labs.
He's at 13 right now.
All right.
I feel kind of bad actually taking it. Yeah, maybe this is
no 13 is fair. I think.
How about it as a top 20 quarterback? I'll take under top 20 quarterback.
Oh, yeah, I'm on that.
You got him as top 20, okay?
Yeah.
Will you give me?
Everyone.
I'll take that too, but can I get under 13? Which is fair. It's a Labs projection under 13 DK points.
I'll take you up on that one too. Under 13, I think he'll get over.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So, all right. So, Pete and Adam, you guys are saying that he's under top 20. I'm saying that he's over top 20. And then we have 13 DK points. Max and I are taking the over, and Adam is on the under on that.
Let me clarify on the first one. Are we including Thursday and Monday in top?
Yeah, we got to put every quarterback.
Yeah.
Every quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have all of them this week, right? We have all it's at 32 quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the week 3, right before we start to hit the bye weeks. That's some good action there. See, I'm glad I talked about this because I was hoping we would actually get some skill game props out of this. Let's talk.
Good move there. It's a good move there, Freedman. It is, to Adam's point, one thing that makes me so happy is Freedman is so on the ball with these skill game props.
Let's talk about some bold calls here. Last week, Adam was the balls with his bold call, saying that the LA Rams would upset the Seahawks. I just have to say it's amazing that Jeff Fisher is 1-1, coaching a team that is yet to score a touchdown on the season. Like, no guy is as good at turning mediocrity into success as Jeff Fisher, and Adam was all over that. So each of you, give us one bold call, a real football call, and then one bold DFS call. And Peter, let's start with you.
All right, bold call from DFS, Dak Prescott, top 10 quarterback. Is that bold?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. From the NFL standpoint, I don't know how bold this is. It started off as like a close match, but I think Oakland wins on the road in Tennessee. Is that bold?
I mean, it's a 1.5 point spread. I wouldn't say it's bold.
Not bold. I don't see it. I wish last week I would have been on the Rams one too. I just don't see. I'm not like too excited. Maybe Houston beats New England. That's not bold, right? Like it's a pick 'em or something.
Yeah, that's a pick. Yeah.
Man, this is tough.
That line actually opened. It opened Houston as a road 2.5 point favorite. Now it's a pick. Like, people like I think. I mean, assuming Jacoby Brissett.
Right, let's do this one. I'm going to go with the Broncos roll in Cincinnati. Broncos win by a touchdown or more. There's my bold call. They're a dog, so that's got to be bold.
Yeah,
that's fair. I think that works. That qualifies. It's not as bold as saying San Francisco is going to win or something, but it's still pretty bold.
Biased and bold, perfect for me. Broncos.
Max, let's go to you. You're on mute.
Let me just make it clear here. I'm making a game call and a fantasy call, or
yes.
So one is a player and one's a team.
Yeah, it can be, or one can be more. I guess, yeah. If it's a player, it is much more focused on fantasy. So yeah, a
right,
game call. And
so I'm going to say my bold call is that Minnesota wins at Carolina, and because I think Carolina's defense is not that good, and Minnesota's look real good, and that defense looks really, really, really strong. So I think they might upset them. And then as a fantasy call, I'm just going to go back to the Riddick thing. I think he's going to score under 15 fantasy points. Still great value, but I just don't think he'll be as good as other guys.
Like that.
All right, Levitan, what about you?
DFS call. There's like some perception out there that Darius Slay is like some impenetrable force. I'm going to go with Jordy Nelson puts 2 touchdowns right in his face. A healthy Jordy Nelson, by the way, up at 95% of the snaps last week. So Jordy for 2 TDs, preferably with Slay coverage on both. And then bold call is going to go in this Jets-Kansas City game. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to pass for over 300 yards. That might be a DFS prop, not a game prop, but I'll say, how about this? I'll say Chiefs score 30 points and Alex Smith over 300 yards.
Love it.
Hate it.
It's bold.
I love it. Travis Kelce and Macklin, baby.
Since one of the Chiefs ever scored 30 points, actually they scored in week 1. I take that back.
Anytime they scored 30 points too, that Tyreek Hill kid is an absolute freak. He is so good on special teams.
He is. He's some double dip magic right there. I think they're going to start to use him a little bit more in the way that they wanted to use DeAnthony Thomas when they drafted him. I think that's what Tyreek Hill is going to be eventually for that team, and obviously a special teams superstar. Okay, let's do some more. If you guys have it in you, some more skill game propositions. I think the Green Bay one is definitely going to come up, but Max, if you have any, now is the time to fire those silver bullets.
I don't have one. I need to think about this one. Can you pass it on to Levitan or Pete?
Yeah,
Pete. Let's see if you can fathom any with the Green Bay one.
Okay, well, we'll come back to Green Bay. I've got a couple ideas on Green Bay, but first we got to get our weekly, whenever I'm on the pod, Andrew Luck prop. I'll take him as a top 2 quarterback this week. Anyone want not top 2?
Yeah, well, you have to take that. I mean,
what should be the standard line? Like top 3? I don't want to screw myself here, but I want to.
You're definitely screwing yourself. I'm sure his projection is in the top 3, but to give us every other quarterback, you're just giving.
Yeah, I just want to be reasonable. Okay. Top 3.
I'll give you 4.
Okay, done. Yeah. He has to be a top 4 quarterback. I think that's generous. I think 3 is. I'll take top 4 though.
I think he doesn't do as well as he.
Yeah, I have respect for San Diego's pass defense to some degree. I think that I'll be on Max's side on that too.
Did you see him running around? Dude, he was moving against the Broncos defense. Can't throw against the no-fly zone. He showed that Andrew Luck athleticism that I love. So
I'll take the over on whatever the Labs project. Well, what did Max say for theoretic projection?
I said 15, under 15.
But hey, let's remember that was his bold call. So
we have him at 12.8. So if somebody wants to take me, I'll take over 12.8.
Oh, you guys only have him 12.
I think we still have Abdullah.
You probably still have Abdullah in. Yeah, that seems a little low.
Yeah. All right, fine.
You know what? That's fair. That's reasonable.
Fine. I'll give him 15.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like when Pete, I during golf, me and Pete had a side bet. I was like, let me get Ricky Fowler at under 15%. Pete was like, no. 19% only or something like that. And then it comes in right on the number for Pete.
Oh yeah. Negotiations
on the negotiations.
Okay, so Levitan, you are taking 15 or over, correct?
Yeah, I'll take that. On DK, obviously.
On DK.
How about actually, I have a way to do this. How about Christine Michael outscores Theoretic instead?
I mean, are you saying this because you think Rawls is going to be out, or you think this regardless of Rawls?
I'm saying Rawls. We're not sure Rawls is going to be out because I was saying that.
Yeah, I actually kind of think Rawls is going to play. He said he was fine. But
really? Okay, so never mind.
But I don't know for sure.
Okay, well,
it's too early in the week for that. I think 15 points is fair.
Yeah.
Let's figure out something here. How about this for a skill game prop? I'll take Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson, and I'll let you take any stack that's not Big Ben, Antonio. Big Ben, Antonio. I don't want you to take Luck and anyone either because that's my boy. I can't root against him. I think that's reasonable. I hope I'm not leaving out some other stupid one. But, yeah, I'll take Jordy Nelson, Aaron Rodgers. You can take any other stack you want, Max.
Oh.
And I can't do Luck and I can't do Ben.
You just can't. You can do Ben and someone else. You just can't do Ben and Antonio.
I see.
I'm trying to think what there's.
Yeah. Let me think for a second.
Julio, Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good one.
I'm really down on Julio.
Newton and Benji. If Rhodes is out.
If Rhodes is out, I love that call. If Rhodes plays, I respect Minnesota's defense though quite a bit. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, there's stacks I like value-wise better than that.
You could take Tannehill and Landry.
Yeah, but sure. I just don't like that as a prop. I like Tannehill and Landry because they're cheap.
Yeah.
Better than Rodgers and Jordan.
Here's an interesting one. What about Eli and Odell?
Yeah, I think also I'm a little down on Odell this year. I think, they have more weapons on offense and, the strength of Redskins secondary is their outside corners. So
what if I move instead of Jordy, what if I do Cobb?
Oh, let me,
I'll take that.
I'll take Bortles, Bortles A-Rob.
That's the other one. Now I don't feel good about that.
I think
You want? Hey, how about this? We'll pivot away from Max just real quick. Do you want Bortles A-Rob versus Jordy Rogers?
I'm the one that brought up Jordy. You're riding on my Jordy.
That's how I roll, bro. I'm just taking the Levitan goodness here. All right.
Okay. How about I'll get Cooper and Carr.
Yeah, I like that. We didn't even talk about that. I like that. Yeah.
Okay. Do I have Cobb? Or do I have
Cooper and Carr over Jordy and A-Rog?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll give you.
I don't love that, but whatever. I'll give you some beer.
Okay. All right. I'll do Cobb versus you, Adam, just because that'll be a fun one.
Yeah. All right. I have Bortles A-Rob.
All right. I love A-Rob this week.
Yeah.
Friedman, what else you got over there? You got any more Blaine Gabbert hot takes, or
he's hindering? We gotta give him a couple minutes.
Here's what I'm gonna say. Hey, will you give me Rodgers and Cobb, and I will do Breeze and Snead.
I want Rod to take Cooks, and I'll take Jordan Nelson.
I want Snead. Snead is the next Antonio Brown. I know that's a crazy statement, but like he's much better than people think.
Breeze at home is just like the scariest thing ever. I mean, the team totals are almost identical. Gosh. I don't want to be too leveraged over here, especially going against the guy who's in first in these player props, Freedman. Sure, why not? I'll do it. I'll take Cobb and Aaron Rodgers versus Snead and Breeze, even though I think you're getting a slight edge.
Okay.
Cobb hasn't had a good game since that Monday night Kansas City 3-touchdown explosion. Crazy. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, not having Jordy last year was obviously not good for him. I think we've fired all of the silver bullets here, unless there are any last-minute skill game propositions to be made.
No.
I think we're tapped out. All right, guys. Thanks for being on the show. We've been speaking with Max Steinberg, Adam Levitan, and Peter Jennings. You can follow them on Twitter at MaxJSteinberg, Adam Levitan, and CSURam88. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattFTOracle. I'm Matthew Freedman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 3. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. Also, you can contact us via email, podcast@fantasylabs.com. Let us know what you think, and follow us on Twitter at FantasyLabsPods. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.